Welcome to Indie Scot News Midweek. Our guests today are Michelle Ferns, formerly of the SNP, now an Alba Party member. Roddy MacLeod, who blogs under the name of Barhead Boy and who hosts Through a Scottish Prism. And finally, Peter Barclay, co-presenter of Tweet Street Occupied Scotland. Welcome all.
Hiya, how are you doing?
Hey, nice to be here.
Okay, we're going to break from the running order because of a breaking story in today's Herald, which involves carrots. Hannah Roger writes, a veteran SNP MP has declared the Alba Party a burden to the cause of independence after he was goaded with carrots. The popular root vegetables adorned with small Union Jacks were left in an attempt to taunt the Perth and North Perthshire MP in a bizarre political feud. Roddy, you invited the 20-year veteran onto the Scottish Prism last Sunday. Did you get a response from Mr. Wishart?
Yes, one that would need to be repeated after the watershed at 9 o'clock. The second word was off, more or less. And but fortunately, we had a mature MP, Angus Brendan McNeill, who stepped into the breach and gave us a wonderful programme. But no, he declined to come and speak to us. But his actions yesterday were, I mean, truly immature to the nth degree. For someone who dislikes the Alba Party so much, to give us publicity, as you never heard about no publicity is bad publicity. It's very childish of him. But I would say here again, Peter, to you and to everyone who's listening, he's welcome to come on to my show anytime and I will debate with him and he can tell us what his concerns are. I put out a blog today, in fact, shouting for unity, because that's what we need in the independence movement. That's what was our strength in 2014. And just as the Alba Party outstretched a hand in May to the SNP to have it cruelly pushed away, I'm still saying it's the way forward. The Alba Party, the SNP Party, the ISP Party, people of no party who believe in the independence cause, we need to unite against the Unionists because they unite against us. You'll never see the Labour Party attacking the Tories in Scotland or the Liberals attacking either of them to the detriment of the Union. They do it to protect the Union. And Pete, it's childish. He spends his days attacking Alba Party, not the Tories, not Westminster, and to boast that he's our longest serving MP and been down there 20 years should actually be a thing of shame for him. That for 20 years, because I tell you what, in 20 years, Pete has never had a bill with his name on it successfully steered through Westminster. He's not had an amendment successfully steered through Westminster with his name in it. And I question what he, and with the greatest respect, any other SNP MP, what they've ever done to advance the cause down there. I can't find anything. And this latest outburst doesn't help the cause and shows his stupidity and immaturity. Yeah. I'll stop at that point because it could go off in one.
Michelle, what do you think of the words veteran SNP MP? To me, they sound like a contradiction in terms.
Well, yes, exactly right. I mean, if you look on social media, the most oft-repeated tile is Winnie Ewing's quote about settling up and not settling down. So the idea that we would have any veteran SNP MPs, never mind ones that want to apply for the position of Speaker in that hallowed hall, it's a contradiction in terms. I think some of the things that Roddy was saying about Peter was so disappointing, I suppose, more than anything, leaving aside what good or what meaningful gain the nationalist MPs being in Westminster deliver anyway, just on the back of what Roddy was saying, amendments and motions and actually, I think Philippa Whitford this morning, I seen something when she was saying she was to step down for her position in health. She actually admitted, nobody listens to me anyway. And I think that's for all of the Scottish MPs that are there. But the thing about Pete is that you think, well, okay, so if you're down there and you're fighting Scotland's cause, you've got to be robust. If you're going to stand up and have debate with ministers and Tory ministers who are literal sociopaths, you've got to be a pretty robust person, right? Okay, because you're asking for, the Scottish people to send you down there to speak up and fight for their cause. Now, if you're also the same person who feels that people leaving carrots with Union Jacks outside your office is literal violence and literal hate, that's a problem when you're dismissing actual violence, particularly against women, and actual hate as nonsense and hysteria. But then you're ramping up being goaded with vegetables is hate-filled. And I mean, really, how effective are you? And the other thing I would say about Pete is that if he wasn't so effective at blocking all other routes for his constituents and voters to speak to him, maybe they wouldn't have to go and stand outside his office. If he didn't block everybody on Twitter, if he responded quite rightly to his constituents' valid inquiries about what he's delivering on the promises he made them, he blocks them. If he's invited to debate with somebody like Roddy, he blocks them and refuses, and then shouts when everybody goes, well, so how are people meant to communicate with their MP? How are people meant to tell Pete Wishart? So if he doesn't like, I would suggest if he doesn't like people turning up outside his door, maybe he should open a dialogue with other nationalists, because what Roddy said was absolutely crucial. During the independence referendum, at no point has the SNP had 1.5 million members, but the independence movement did when we voted for them. It was a huge broad church, people from all political parties and none, all political sides of the spectrum who voted for independence. So the idea that Pete says, when he says our independence movement, he means the SNP's independence movement. He doesn't mean our. So we I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Peter, did you see the story today?
I did see the story today. I was a wee bit disappointed with the story, to be perfectly honest. And I like to do it in comparisons. I mean, you'd said about a 20-year veteran. It's an oxymoron. Like, you're supposed to be fighting for independence, not celebrating 20 years down there. But I like to make comparisons because I'm not an affiliate of ALBA or of SNP or any political party. But I noticed that he was comparing that as violence when you've got members of the SNP openly laughing at rape victims on the J.K. Rowling case. So, I mean, I don't see the violence and bigoted narrative that Pete seems to be wanting to sell to people. And from a straight down the line person, it turns me more against the SNP, because I don't see them doing anything for what I want, which is independence. And it's absolutely ridiculous that he says that, as Michelle says, he blocks people. He doesn't want to interact with people, and he'll just use pejorative terms to try and shut off debate. Yeah.
Have you invited him on Tweet Street?
I'm blocked. Like most of us on here, I'm blocked by him. So
that's not going to be happening.
Listen, the invite's open to anybody who is willing to try and sell an independence message to come on to Tweet Street. Right. And that's the one thing that I'll always hold open. It doesn't matter who you are or what party, or if you don't represent a party. If you want to come on to Tweet Street and sell an independence message, then you'll have my back and my support.
Yeah. Can I just say, Peter, last thing on this, is that it reminds me of Ian Murray screaming about stickers outside his constituency office as an assault, and he wanted the police called in. And, to be imitating the unionist, the Red Tory, or Ian Murray doesn't look good for Pete, and he needs to grow up and start talking to us.
Yeah. Well, he's had enough airtime. Let's move on. Michelle, if I could start with you on the real running order we had for this broadcast. We've just had 2 anniversaries. One in Ireland, from the 14th of December 1918, where pro-India radicals defeated the Comfy Slipper Party, we could call them, the IPP. True to their election promise, they abandoned Westminster and established the first Dáil Éireann. We've just passed the 2nd anniversary of the 3rd successive pro-independence majority at Westminster for Scotland. Our route to abandoning the Union is easier than Ireland's because we're co-signatories to a treaty. Are the SNP now the 21st century Redmondites of the Irish Parliamentary Party? 3 mandates, no action?
Yes. There you go. It's pretty much yes. And it's weird because obviously there's correlations with the Comfy Slipper Party. I suppose the gradualist will get there somewhere, and Sinn Féin, who had said, a bit, we talk a lot about colonialism and that colonialist mindset. I think it was when people in Ireland said, actually, we're going to stop asking permission. We're going to go ahead, we're not going to do it in a time frame that suits the state that oppresses us. Why would you? So I think the correlations between that and the current Scottish government, and also actually more recently, the familiarity with Labour in Scotland, which would be, I suppose, the other comfy slipper party of hegemony in Scotland before the SNP tenure, which is what I pretty much see now. I know it now. It's like, sounds mad given on the back they've just won an election on an increased vote share. But I look at the SNP now, and I think that it's moribund. I look at it like the last Labour administration in the devolved Parliament in Scotland, and that they're literally, because there isn't a credible alternative yet. That's literally why they are there. And it was the same in Ireland. That lack of opposition, because nature abhors a vacuum, especially in politics. The fact that Sinn Féin were able to take up not just the constitutional argument, but the argument for Labour, the argument for unionisation of Labour, the topics that were the front of the working classes agendas, and take them forward, I think was what gave them, and still does give them, a kind of credibility within Ireland. And that boldness, that was boldness that we've seen in 2014, that boldness and belief that they can and that they're going to, and they dare anybody to stop them, is a part of the reason why support for reunification in Ireland is the highest it's ever been. I think on the back of that bold action, and Sinn Féin basically saying that we don't, I suppose, turning up to the parliament of your oppressor gives the idea, you're giving it credibility by being there, giving it legitimacy and making and of your decisions, a Four Nations approach, or however you want to call it. I've never found in my life that asking bullies to please be nice and please give you your sweeties and your dinner money has ever happened for me, ever. What bullies don't expect you to do is to stop running and turn around and punch them as hard as you can in the stomach. And I do think that there's a growing restlessness, frustration, and a slow growing feeling of betrayal in Scotland, especially in working class areas like mine. That a government who's been given mandate after mandate, they keep asking for our trust, we keep giving it, we keep getting nowhere.
I'd like to comment on that, Peter, if you don't mind. Just a short comment. The difference that I see, and if you've a look back over the history of the two anniversaries, I don't think there was an Irish Taoiseach proclaiming to be part British the way that we have a Scottish First Minister proclaiming to be British. And that's the very thing that I see that's the difference between the two anniversaries.
Yeah, that's very true. I would just say two things. One, after the Sinn Féin did that, 2 months later, the Sinn Féin declared independence from the British state. But the thing, and I think we touched on it earlier, Michelle did, in our previous question, we can never gain our independence, in my humble opinion, using Westminster rules. We will never get there. And Winnie Ewing was right. We're down there to settle up, not settle in, and too many have. And you'll notice now that even although she's not the Taoiseach yet, the wonderful Mary Lou McDonald is already preparing the ground for a border poll from when she gets in there. It's a priority for her to reunify the island of Ireland and get the 6 occupied counties back into the full Irish Republic. Whereas what are we doing? We're preparing to get men into women's toilets and not much else. So it's a worry.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic. Roddy, while you're speaking, Dominic Raab, of all people, has thrown a legal cat among the Scottish judicial pigeons and their plans for non-jury trials for certain crimes. Joanna Cherry appears to think there could be consequences for Scotland. She quotes Raab's words, "Trial by jury is another ancient right applied variably around the UK. That will be in our Bill of Rights." Could this be a way out for those of us who are worried about non-jury trials?
Well, actually, the first thing I should say is that it was actually Dominic Raab got this idea when he went to Carlisle and said, I didn't know Scotland was so close to England. And then that's where he felt he should make the decision. Again, it shows to those people out there who are watching this who may disagree with the fact that Scotland is a colony of England. I think this just shows that the English now want to change our law and under the Treaty of Union, Scots law, like the Scottish Kirk, was meant to be separate and untouchable. Well, they're breaking the Treaty of Union again. I think it gives succour to people like myself who believe that the way to gain Scottish independence is not by a referendum, but by withdrawing from the Treaty of Union. And this very act, I mean, it's barbaric. It's just so undemocratic. It's not his choice. It's not Westminster. It's up to the Scottish people and the Scottish legal system and the Scottish elected members to decide this, not England. Because that's what England's do, is foisting upon us what they want us to be. And that's why we are, to all intents and purposes, a colony.
Yeah. Michelle?
I'll just keep it short to say thank absolute goodness for Joanna Cherry. The assaults on, the various assaults on democracy and freedoms and juryless trials is something that unfortunately is the direction that Scotland's been heading in lately, giving many of us a great cause for concern. So yes, thank goodness for Joanna Cherry, but I would say yes, the attacks. The attacks on the Scottish separate legal system, a system that's always been prized in some ways across the world as a system with more integrity than the English system, for good reason. I think it's something we should all be worried about, but we should, while we're asking those questions of Dominic Raab, we should also ask ourselves questions if we're comfortable with the direction that our own government in Scotland is heading towards, and that certainly concerns me.
Yeah, certainly raises that question. Peter, sticking with Dominic Raab, he also wrote in the Times yesterday, freedom of speech is the liberty that guards all the others. Meanwhile, his government is torturing and basically slowly murdering a journalist and whistleblower on behalf of the land of the free. I ask, where are our Scottish representatives? This is happening in the same city where they enjoy their state-sponsored food and hospitality. Is their silence and continued presence legitimizing political persecution and torture?
Craig Murray. That's all I have to say to that. So is the answer to that yes? I think that we're in a very dangerous place, Scotland, and we're only, by being attached to the Union, we're only going to head to a more dangerous place. We have no rights to say what governance we should have. I'm all for independence, and I think that the treatment of Craig Murray and Julian Assange, they mirror one another. It shows that totalitarian approach by governments, and it didn't start with death camps. The Nazi Germany didn't start with death camps.
Roddy?
Well, I would say that we find that people in the SNP are happy to talk about the human rights and whatnot in China and Russia because it's trendy down in England to do that in the English Parliament. But you're right in saying that they seem to have stayed silent on this appalling behaviour that's happening to poor Julian Assange for telling the truth. It's happened to Craig Murray, as Pete's pointed out, for telling the truth. Journalists are being imprisoned in England and Scotland. That is a cause for concern, and they're now talking about doing away with our human rights and giving us, think about this, folks, Tory Bill of Rights. Can you imagine what that's going to be like?
Yeah.
It's a worry.
Yeah. Michelle, moving on. Next topic. The school sex survey issue is ongoing. Nicola Sturgeon appears to be doubling down to defend this controversial survey, but a kids watchdog calls for census to be halted. How long before the SNP leader opts for damage limitation? Because this really is controversial.
Which is absolutely forced to. I always think the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour. So if you look at how the SNP government behaved over the named persons legislation, which, by the way, has been shoehorned in under another name, under the umbrella of this education reform in schools. God, it's such a big subject, Peter. We could be here all day. How to keep it quick. I think that it will eventually fall because, like all eventually bad law falls when people just refuse to be complicit in it. The difference about this particular issue is that because it's not law, it's not statute, it's not legislation, it's guidance. It's de facto legislation dressed up as guidance, because the Scottish Government can't actually break the law. The Scottish Government, I'll try a few times, as they did with the Gerfake stuff, with the child, they'll quite often try to go beyond the bounds of their devolved powers, not far enough by actually getting us, demanding independence and removing us from this broken union, but tinkering around the edges, so to get their what seems to me social engineering through, because they're too busy dealing with the distractions of, or having all this culture war, because they're taking their eye off the ball about the fact that they're not delivering what they're there to deliver, what they actually have a manifesto for. But in terms of it falling, I think that a critical mass is building when you've got, faith schools, when you've got Catholic bishops, when you've got the Children's Commissioner, when you've got children's charities, when you've got charities for abused children, saying, everybody coming up with concerns. That is, it's a bit like going back to Pete. Any government who doesn't want to listen to the fact you've got a broad spectrum of Scottish civil and population saying to you, we have concerns. Nobody's saying you shouldn't talk to kids about sex in school at all, right? But as far as I can see, anytime that they're faced with valid question, this could be from women about women's rights, this could be concerned parents about the kind of questions their kids are getting asked. I have to say, my daughter's 14, she's in 4th year at school. She's her expression for these questions, she calls them creepy and frankly sinister. And there's none of her friends that think that these questions are okay, they would feel comfortable about answering them. Never mind when I ask her questions of, who do you think is going to be reading this? Who's going to be collating this data? Who's analysing this? Who set the questions? Is it being ethically reviewed and peer reviewed? No, it's not. Is it, if it's a health and wellbeing survey, are the health and wellbeing services such as the NHS involved? No, of course they're not. So many questions, and when Nicola Sturgeon is faced with these really valid questions and concerns around safeguarding, her answer is that children are having sex anyway. Everybody's doing it. So really, if we take that approach, I should just be handing my wee girl condoms and, I don't know, crack pipe on the way out and just go, I know it's illegal, but you're probably going to do it anyway. I don't recognise that description. The people I live, unlike Nicola Sturgeon, and actually it struck me recently how many of our politicians, I know this is not politically correct to say this, but how many of our politicians don't have children? So how many of our politicians who have, I'm not saying that I'm an expert on mothering. I've been mothering for 35 years and I will be for the next few years full time. I'm not an expert on that, but I do live with young people, have brought up young people, understand that young people have sex and occasionally take drugs and do all sorts of things that as parents we wouldn't wish them to do. I don't at any point approve, embolden or empower my children to do that. I certainly don't empower outside agencies. If somebody was coming to my close, pressing my buzzer and asking my daughter, does she want to buy a packet of fags? I would say no. Why should I react differently when schools are asking my daughter about her sexual habits, about how often she has anal sex, or I mean, it's ridiculous. It won't stand, but she will. An answer to your question is she'll wait till the very, very, very last minute, and then when she does, she won't say that we're rolling back on it. She'll say we're waiting for further consultation, and she'll blame us and lecture us all for being old-fashioned and not being clever enough to have the intelligence she assumed us to have. Because if we did, we would know that she was right about everything.
Yeah, it's strange. As a parent myself, I've spent the past 25 years bringing up 2 kids, and I do wonder what sort of experience the politicians have of rearing children who make these laws. Peter, you had the witches on yesterday. Did they have anything to say about that? That was a very interesting program.
Yeah, I had them on. They're basically doing. I'm fans of the witches. So they're basically doing what most women that I've ever, that I've respected all women, but the ones that are closest to me that I respect and love, that have guided me along my life. those, and they're called witches, but those women are no different to any person, any woman that I've loved and that's helped me through my life. They're doing the right things. They're trying to safeguard people. Tweet Street launched a parents forum as well, and we're hoping to get concerned parents, because at the end of the day, there's professional bodies that the government are ignoring, that are looking after the well-being of women and kids, when our government seem to be failing them. So we're going to try and add the parents' voices. We're going to try and add women's voices, and just give them no chance to ignore us any longer, because that's all they've done.
Peter, I thought it was very telling that neither of the women, as far as I could hear, revealed their names. Now, there's a reason for that.
It's safety. They feel unsafe, and the thing that I was angry at some of the points when the women were talking to us, because I don't understand people who treat women like that. Listen, I was a bit of an arse in my days when I was growing up, and probably I'd had a fair bit in sexism in the years that I was growing up, and without realising it. And I'm learning these things. But it just seems to be that the government are going the opposite way, and it's a case of they're shutting everything down. And no, it's wrong for me. I don't agree with the way that the women have been treated, and I back them in everything that they do. I'm on their side.
Yeah. Roddy?
Just on the answer to your question, yes, she'll ignore it. I mean, we've just got to look back to, as Michelle alluded to, to past behaviour. If you look at the history of the judicial review, Roddy Dunlop, her QC, was telling her, we're going to lose this, stop now, but she kept going.
Yeah.
She refuses to back down. But there's a few things I would say in this sex survey. Now, for the gentleman in the room here just now, if you can cast your mind back to when it was black and white television, and I was 14, 15, if you sitting in a classroom with your mates and there's a question, have you had vaginal, anal sex or oral sex in the last year, and how many times? Mate, 27, I'm 38 times, I'm 42 times. The data itself won't be worth shit, because we young boys of that age will tell lies, and any wee girl that's been having sex, she's more likely to go the opposite way and go, oh, no, I've never had sex, I've never done anything. So the data you've got to say is, why would you want this data? Because I don't believe it will be worth it. Rubbish in, rubbish out.
Absolutely.
And I don't see the. But here's the real thing about it. We're the education committee. Standards are falling in the schools. Kids have not been able to go to school for 2 years virtually. They'll be having to study at home. I would want to put out a survey saying, how have you coped with COVID in your studies? Where do you need help in your studies? What can we do to make life easier for you now that you're getting closer to your exams? I would think educational questions is what they should be asking. Instead, this gender fanatical government wants to know about teenagers' alleged sex life. That shows you how ridiculous they are. And it's time they stopped it and started addressing the problem of education in Scotland, as opposed to the sex life or alleged sex life of teenagers.